Harley Flanagan, the firebrand frontman of New York hardcore pioneers Cro-Mags, has never been one to hold back. Recently, he set the internet buzzing after calling out Metallica and Pantera, two of the biggest names in heavy music. Harley's claim? Despite Cro-Mags' influence on the crossover sound, merging hardcore punk and thrash, neither band ever took them on a major tour. For fans, this raised eyebrows. Cro-Mags were there when hardcore and metal first collided, shaping the aggressive sound that later defined metal's golden era. Yet, they were often left in the underground shadows. When Harley spoke, it wasn't just frustration. It was a reminder of how history often forgets the bands that laid the foundation. His words hit hard. "We inspired a lot of those guys, but they never threw us a bone." That line sparked heated debates online. Did Metallica and Pantera overlook a crucial piece of their own history? Or was Harley simply stirring the pot, as he's been known to do? Either way, his call-out forced fans to revisit the legacy of Cro-Mags, a band whose fingerprints are all over heavy music, but who never got the spotlight tours they may have deserved. To understand Harley's frustration, we need to rewind to the 1980s. The Cro-Mags weren't just another punk band. They were pioneers of crossover thrash, fusing hardcore's raw energy with metal's technical aggression. Their 1986 debut album, The Age of Quarrel, shook the underground. It was fast, heavy, and dangerous, bridging the gap between punks with mohawks and metalheads with denim jackets. At the same time, Metallica was rising with Master of Puppets, and Pantera would soon reinvent themselves with Cowboys from Hell. But Cro-Mags were already living that fusion years earlier. They played in grimy New York clubs, often sharing the stage with bands like Anthrax and Slayer, who openly embraced hardcore energy. Without Cro-Mags and their peers, thrash and hardcore might never have blended into the aggressive style that became mainstream in the 90s. Yet while their influence ran deep, Cro-Mags remained stuck in smaller venues, overlooked by the major metal tours. That's the heart of Harley's complaint. He wasn't asking for charity. He was pointing out a truth. Cro-Mags helped create the sound Metallica and Pantera became famous for. So why were they never invited along for the ride when arenas and stadiums opened up? When Harley mentioned Metallica by name, fans immediately divided. On one hand, Metallica were never known for bringing hardcore bands on tour. They preferred fellow metal acts, Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, or hard rock openers that appealed to broad audiences. From a business perspective, it made sense. But from Harley's view, Metallica owed more to the hardcore underground than they admitted. In the early 80s, James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich were influenced by the same underground scenes Cro-Mags thrived in. They were listening to Misfits, Discharge, and punk records that shaped their aggressive approach. Cro-Mags embodied that world. Yet when Metallica became the world's biggest metal band, they didn't look back to pull them up. Harley saw it as a betrayal, not personal, but cultural. He believed the hardcore scene deserved recognition for feeding metal's evolution. They knew who we were, Harley insisted, but we were never asked. For Cro-Mags fans, it stung. Metallica had the power to change their fortunes with one tour slot. Instead, Cro-Mags kept grinding in the underground while Metallica conquered stadiums. That divide, mainstream success versus underground loyalty, still fuels Harley's resentment today, decades after those missed opportunities. If Metallica's omissions stung, Pantera's hurt even more. Pantera built their empire on groove metal in the 90s, but they often spoke about being inspired by the intensity of hardcore. Phil Anselmo, their larger-than-life vocalist, grew up loving punk and hardcore. He was even spotted at Cro-Mags shows in New Orleans before Pantera broke through. To Harley, this made Pantera's snub harder to swallow. "Phil knew where we came from," Harley said. "He was one of us." Yet when Pantera toured the world, their opening slots went to metal bands like White Zombie, Sepultura, and Slayer. Again, Cro-Mags were left on the outside. Fans point out that Pantera and Cro-Mags could have been a perfect pairing. Two bands known for raw energy, aggression, and loyal fans. It could have been a brotherhood on the road. Instead, Harley felt like Pantera shut the door. Whether it was management politics, timing, or simply business strategy, Cro-Mags never got that lift. To Harley, Pantera's choice wasn't just business. It was a betrayal of hardcore's role in shaping heavy music. His frustration wasn't just bitterness. It was the pain of watching others climb the ladder with your DNA and their sound, while you stayed underground. At the center of this whole debate is one album, The Age of Quarrel. Released in 1986, it remains one of the most important hardcore records ever made. With tracks like We Gotta Know and World Peace, Cro-Mags fused metallic riffs with hardcore fury, creating a blueprint countless bands followed. Without that record, the crossover genre might not exist in the same way. Thrash bands borrowed from it. Metalcore decades later would trace roots back to it. Even Pantera's groove-heavy aggression echoes the Cro-Mags' New York hardcore bite. Yet while the album became legendary among underground fans, it never got the mainstream push. Harley often says the industry never wanted hardcore to go fully mainstream. It was too raw, too confrontational. That's why Cro-Mags' legacy feels bittersweet. Their fingerprints are everywhere, but their name rarely appears on the big tour posters alongside Metallica, Pantera, or Slayer. For Harley, The Age of Quarrel isn't just an album, it's proof that Cro-Mags were innovators. So when the big bands ignored them, it wasn't just a missed business opportunity. It was a denial of their rightful place in metal history. When Harley spoke out, fans immediately lit up forums and social media. Some agreed, saying Cro-Mags were criminally underrated and deserved those big tours. They argued that without bands like Cro-Mags, there would be no crossover, no hardcore-influenced thrash, and maybe no Pantera as we know them. Others pushed back, claiming Harley was bitter and rewriting history. They pointed out that Cro-Mags had internal drama, lineup changes, and chaos that made them risky to tour with. Metallica and Pantera, they said, needed reliability, not volatility. Still, even Harley's critics admitted one thing: Cro-Mags' influence is undeniable. Whether or not they deserved an opening slot on Metallica's Black Album tour or Pantera's vulgar display of Power Run, their sound inspired a generation. For fans, Harley's words reopened an old debate. Should music history celebrate the innovators, even if they didn't become massive stars? Or does success speak for itself? In a way, Harley achieved his goal. By calling out the giants, he forced everyone to revisit Cro-Mags' legacy and reminded the world that the story of heavy music is incomplete without them. Part of the reason Cro-Mags never hit the mainstream might not just be about Metallica or Pantera, it could also be about themselves. Harley Flanagan's band was infamous for internal conflicts, fistfights on stage, legal battles over the Cro-Mags name, and constant lineup changes became part of their reputation. While Metallica had their own drama, they managed to keep the machine moving. Cro-Mags often imploded just as momentum built. To promoters, that made them risky. Why take Cro-Mags on a major tour if you weren't sure the band would make it to the final show? Harley himself admits his band lived hard, fought hard, and sometimes sabotaged their own opportunities. But he insists that shouldn't erase their contributions. The music still mattered. To him, the chaos was part of the authenticity. Cro-Mags weren't polished, they were real. Still, when you compare their track record to the disciplined rise of Metallica or Pantera, it's clear why managers might have hesitated. Harley's call-out is partly about what others didn't do, but it's also a reflection of what Cro-Mags couldn't always do for themselves. While Metallica and Pantera may not have taken Cro-Mags on tour, many musicians have acknowledged their influence. Members of Anthrax, Slayer, and even Dave Mustaine of Megadeth have spoken about the energy Cro-Mags brought to the scene. Hardcore bands like Agnostic Front and Sick of It All consider them pioneers. In later years, younger bands in the metalcore and hardcore revival scenes pointed directly to Cro-Mags as a blueprint. Harley knows this, and it fuels his frustration even more. Everybody got something from us, he often says. And he's not wrong. The DNA of Cro-Mags is everywhere in heavy music. But acknowledgement is different from opportunity. Harley wasn't just looking for compliments. He wanted doors opened. A tour slot with Metallica or Pantera could have changed everything. Instead, Cro-Mags remained legends of the underground, never breaking into the mainstream spotlight. Harley's recent words are less about bitterness toward fans or fellow musicians. They're a reminder that influence doesn't always equal recognition, and sometimes history is written by the bands who sold the most tickets, not the ones who changed the sound. It's hard not to imagine an alternate reality. Picture this. Cro-Mags opening for Metallica on the Justice for All tour, introducing tens of thousands of fans to New York hardcore every night. Or imagine them alongside Pantera in the 90s, showing that hardcore energy could match groove metal's intensity. Those tours could have catapulted Cro-Mags into a new league. Instead, those opportunities never came. Harley believes that decisions shaped not only Cro-Mags' fate, but also how history remembers hardcore. Without those mainstream bridges, hardcore stayed underground for decades, only later breaking through with bands like Hatebreed. Harley often wonders if things might have been different had Metallica or Pantera extended a hand. Maybe Cro-Mags would be remembered not just as legends of the underground, but as peers of the greats. Instead, their story remains one of influence without recognition, innovation without reward. That "what if" is at the heart of Harley's callout. It's not just about ego, it's about history and the opportunities that slipped away. In the end, Harley Flanagan's callout isn't just about bitterness. It's about a man defending his band's legacy. Cro-Mags may never have toured arenas with Metallica or Pantera, but their mark on music is permanent. They were architects of crossover thrash, rebels of New York hardcore, and a blueprint for generations that followed. Harley's words sting because they carry truth. Yes, Cro-Mags were volatile. Yes, they made mistakes, but their contribution to heavy music deserves recognition. Whether or not Metallica or Pantera owed them a tour slot is up for debate, but Harley's message is clear. Don't forget where the sound came from. For fans of heavy music, his call-out is more than just drama. It's a reminder to dig deeper into the roots of the genre. Behind every superstar band, there are unsung heroes who shape the sound. Cro-Mags may never headline stadiums, but they remain immortal in the underground. And if Harley has his way, their story will never be ignored again.